You ready for this?
I have been ready for 22 years.
You don't have to prove anything to anyone down there.
I know, that's exactly why I came. Let's go show them who I became.
Yo, is that the same jacket from last year?
Remember this moment, because one day you are going to need me to forget it.
Nothing. She said nothing.
The jet touched down at Seoul Incheon Airport at exactly 11:47 p.m., and the rain did not care about the occasion. It fell in heavy, in different sheets across the tarmac, washing over the sleek white aircraft as if trying to erase it from the night. But there was no erasing what was inside that plane. There was no undoing what was about to walk through those doors. Inside the terminal, Jason Park stood near the floor-to-ceiling glass windows of his private reception lounge, straightening his cufflinks for the fourth time in 10 minutes. His tuxedo was Italian. His watch was Swiss. His gala, held in the grand ballroom of the Lotte Hotel just 20 minutes from the airport, had already been featured in 3 Korean business magazines before it even began. 10 years. 10 years of building Park Global Technologies from a small startup into one of South Korea's most recognized tech firms. Tonight was his night. Tonight was the night everyone would see exactly how far Jason Park had come. His assistant Linda approached him from behind, tablet in hand, heels clicking against the marble floor. "Mr. Park," she said quietly, "the last of your invited guests are arriving in the next 30 minutes. Everyone is accounted for." "Everyone?" he asked, not turning from the window. "Everyone," she confirmed. "Including your international guests. The ones you flew in from the States." A slow smile crossed Jason's face. Yes, the ones from the States. That was the part of tonight he had been looking forward to the most. Not the speeches. Not the awards. Not even the press coverage. No. The part he had been quietly savoring for weeks was the look on one particular face when she walked into that ballroom and saw what he had built. When she saw who he had become. When she finally understood that the boy she had looked past in high school had become someone worth seeing. Her name was Mia Johnson. And 22 years ago, she had been the only person in Jefferson High School who had made Jason Park feel completely and utterly invisible. Not through cruelty. That was the part that stung the most. She had not mocked him. She had not laughed at him. She had simply never noticed him at all. And for a teenage boy trying to find his footing in a new country, a new language, and a new social landscape, being invisible to the one person he admired most was its own quiet devastation. He had found her on LinkedIn 3 months ago. The profile was modest, almost suspiciously so. A small headshot. A simple title. Founder, Nova Technologies. No flashy bio. No list of accolades. He had assumed she was running some small boutique firm. Maybe a consulting agency. Maybe a mid-level startup that was doing reasonably well. He had invited her to the gala the same way a cat invites a mouse into a room it already controls, with a casual, generous smile that concealed everything underneath it. He wanted her to see this. All of this. He wanted her to understand that the quiet, overlooked boy from Korea had built an empire while he assumed she had built considerably less. He had assumed wrong. But he did not know that yet. Linda's tablet buzzed. She looked down at it and frowned slightly. "Mr. Park, the ground team at the airfield just sent a message. They say one of your guests arrived on." As she paused, reading carefully, "a private charter aircraft. Not a commercial flight." Jason turned from the window for the first time. "Which guest?" "They didn't specify by name. They just flagged it because it wasn't on the expected arrivals manifest." "Don't bother," Jason said, waving a hand. "Probably one of the investment group delegates. They always travel differently." He turned back to the window. "Make sure the ballroom is ready. I want the lights lower on the entrance side. More dramatic." She walked away. Jason stayed at the window. Below him, through the rain-streaked glass, he could see the distant runway lights blinking in the dark. He could not see the white jet that had just parked at the far end of the private terminal. He could not see the door that had just opened. He could not see the man who stepped out first, tall, broad-shouldered, moving through the rain with the kind of unhurried certainty that only comes from having nothing left to prove. And he absolutely could not see the woman who appeared at the top of those aircraft stairs. But Linda could. Linda had driven the welcome car herself because 2 of the regular drivers had called in sick. She was parked at the edge of the private terminal, umbrella in hand, holding a small welcome card with the Park Global logo on it. She was expecting someone ordinary. Someone who would smile politely, take the card, and ask how far it was to the hotel. She was not expecting this. The man came down the stairs first. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him the way tuxedos fit men in movies, perfectly, effortlessly, like it had been sewn onto him that morning. He moved to the bottom of the stairs and turned back, and that was when Linda saw her. The woman stood at the top of the aircraft stairs for just a moment, just one single breath of a moment, as if she was giving the night time to prepare itself. She was wearing a floor-length emerald gown that caught what little light existed on that rainy tarmac and held it like it belonged to her. Her natural hair was pinned up with the kind of elegance that looks effortless only when it is not. Diamond earrings. A posture that said she had walked into every room in the world and found them all slightly smaller than expected. She descended the stairs slowly. Linda forgot to open her umbrella. The woman reached the bottom of the stairs, looked directly at Linda with warm, patient eyes and smiled. "You must be from Park Global," she said. "I'm Mia. Mia Johnson. I'm an old classmate of Jason's." Linda opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Welcome to Seoul, Ms. Johnson," she finally managed. Then Linda looked down at her tablet and typed one urgent message to Jason Park, "Google her. Right now. Before she gets to the ballroom." CTA, if you are already hooked, smash that like button and subscribe. You do not want to miss what happens when Mia walks into that ballroom. Jason Park was mid-conversation with the South Korean Deputy Minister of Trade when his phone buzzed in his breast pocket. He excused himself with a polished smile, stepped to the side of the ballroom entrance, and pulled out his phone. Linda's message was sitting at the top of his notifications. He read it once. Then he read it again. Then he did what she told him to do. He Googled Mia Johnson. The first result loaded and Jason's smile disappeared so completely it was as if it had never existed. Forbes magazine, Mia Johnson, the billionaire who built an empire in silence. He scrolled down with a thumb that had suddenly gone slightly unsteady. Time magazine, 50 women changing the world. Number 7, Mia Johnson, founder and CEO of Nova Technologies. Nova Technologies closes Series D funding round at $4.2 billion valuation. Mia Johnson becomes the first Black woman to ring the NASDAQ opening bell twice in the same decade. TED Global, Mia Johnson's talk on tech equity surpasses 12 million views. Jason lowered his phone slowly. The ballroom noise continued around him, laughter, clinking glasses, the string quartet playing something elegant in the corner. But all of it had gone strangely distant, like sound heard underwater. His chest felt tight in a way that had nothing to do with his tuxedo. He had invited a billionaire to his party to feel sorry for herself. He had set a trap and somehow managed to catch himself in it. His girlfriend Soo-yeon appeared at his elbow, flute of champagne in hand, reading his face the way she always did, quickly and accurately. "What happened?" she asked. "Nothing," he said. "Jason." Her voice was quiet but firm. "What happened?" He turned the phone screen toward her without a word. She read it. Her expression did not change dramatically, but her eyes sharpened in the way they did when she was recalibrating something important. "This is the classmate you invited?" "I didn't know," he said. "You didn't look her up before inviting her?" He said nothing. Soo-yeon handed him back his phone and took a slow sip of champagne. "Well," she said, "I suppose the evening just became considerably more interesting." Before Jason could respond, a ripple moved through the ballroom. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was the kind of ripple that moves through a room when something shifts in the atmosphere, when the air pressure changes slightly and every person in the space feels it without knowing why. Heads began to turn. Conversations paused mid-sentence. The string quartet continued playing, but even the violinist glanced up. The ballroom doors had opened. Mia Johnson walked in on the arm of her husband, and the room simply stopped pretending it had not noticed. She was not trying to make an entrance. That was the most devastating part. She was not scanning the room for reactions or walking slowly for effect. She simply moved the way a woman moves when she has spent 20 years becoming entirely comfortable in her own skin, with a natural, unhurried grace that made everything around her look slightly more ordinary by comparison. Dre walked beside her with the same quiet energy. Not behind her. Not ahead. Beside her. Equal. Matched. Two people who had clearly spent years building something together that had nothing to do with money. Old classmates who had been gathered in clusters around the ballroom began to recognize her. First one. Then another. Then a third. Is that Mia Johnson? Wait, Mia? From Jefferson High? That's her husband? Who is he? She came on a private jet. Linda told me. A private jet. The whispers moved through the room like electricity through water, fast, invisible, and impossible to stop. Jason stood frozen near the entrance column, one hand wrapped around a champagne flute he had forgotten he was holding. He watched Mia scan the room slowly, taking it in without urgency, without anxiety, without any of the nervous energy that fills a person when they are somewhere they are not sure they belong. Then her eyes found his. It lasted 3 seconds. Maybe 4. She looked at him with an expression that was warm and completely composed and carried within it something far more unsettling than anger or triumph. She looked at him the way a person looks at a place they used to live, with a mild, distant recognition that holds no particular weight anymore. As if he was simply part of the scenery of a chapter she had already finished reading. Then she looked away. And somehow that was the thing that undid him entirely. Not the jet. Not the gown. Not the $4.2 billion valuation. It was the looking away. The ease of it. The fact that after everything, after all the years he had spent imagining this moment, he was simply not the most important thing in her eyeline. Dre leaned close to Mia's ear as they moved deeper into the ballroom. He just saw us, he said quietly. I know, Mia said. You okay? She reached up and touched his hand where it rested on her arm. I have been okay for a very long time, she said. Tonight is just confirmation. Within minutes, Mia was surrounded. Not by people performing interest, but by genuine warmth from old classmates who had not seen her in 2 decades and were simply happy she existed in the world. She moved through each conversation with full attention, remembering names, asking real questions, laughing at real things. A woman named Priya grabbed both her hands and nearly cried. A man named Kevin told her she looked exactly the same, and she told him he was lying, and they both laughed until their eyes watered. Jason watched all of it from across the room. Siyun watched Jason. You should go speak to her, Siyun said finally. I will, he said. You've said that 4 times in the last 20 minutes. He straightened his jacket, picked up a fresh glass of champagne, crossed the ballroom with the careful, deliberate steps of a man walking towards something he was not entirely sure he was ready for. Mia saw him coming from 10 feet away. She did not tense. She did not prepare a face. She simply waited, present and unhurried, the way she did everything. Mia, Jason said, stopping in front of her. His voice came out steadier than he felt. You look incredible, Jason. She smiled warmly. Congratulations on 10 years. What you've built here is genuinely impressive. The compliment landed differently than he expected. He had braced for sarcasm or cold politeness. What he got was sincerity, and sincerity from her was somehow harder to receive than anything else would have been. I had no idea I knew you were doing well, but I didn't realize. He stopped himself. Tried again. I should have Googled you before sending the invitation. Mia tilted her head slightly. Why didn't you? A pause. An honest one. I assumed, he said. You assumed, she repeated, not unkindly, but with a precision that made the words land exactly where they needed to. Before Jason could respond, Dre appeared at Mia's side carrying 2 glasses of water and wearing the kind of calm that makes other men instinctively check their own posture. Jason, Mia said, this is my husband, Andre. Dre extended his hand. Jason shook it. The grip was firm, warm, and completely without aggression. Good to finally meet you, Dre said. Mia's mentioned you. 3 words. And yet those 3 words expanded in Jason's mind like a slow detonation, filling every corner with questions he suddenly, desperately needed answered and knew with absolute certainty he was never going to ask. CTA, this story is just getting started. Subscribe right now. Batch 3 is where everything explodes. Drop a comment. Did Jason deserve this moment? The dinner hour arrived the way dinner hours arrive at events like this, announced by the gentle chiming of crystal and the soft redirection of servers guiding guests toward their assigned tables. The ballroom shifted from cocktail energy into something slower and more intimate. Candles burned lower. The string quartet transitioned into something softer. Conversations deepen the way they do when people sit down together, and the standing-up performance of the evening gives way to something more honest. Mia and Dre were seated at table 4, a round table near the center of the room draped in white linen and set with the kind of cutlery that exists purely to communicate that someone spent a great deal of money on this evening. Around them sat a collection of old classmates, Kevin, loud and warm and genuinely funny, Priya, now a pediatric surgeon in London, Thomas, who worked in urban planning in Chicago and said very little but listened to everything. And there was Soo-yeon, who had moved her place card deliberately from table 7 with the quiet efficiency of a woman who has learned to arrange the world around her intentions without making a scene about it. Soo-yeon had been with Jason for 4 years. She knew his world intimately, his ambitions, his insecurities, his obsession with perception and legacy. She had attended dozens of events like this one, sitting beside him while he performed his success for carefully curated audiences. She had told herself this was simply how ambitious people operated. But watching Mia Johnson exist in a room, effortlessly, fully, without performance, made Soo-yeon understand for the first time the difference between a person who has achieved success and a person who has become it. Kevin leaned across the table toward Mia, wine glass in hand, face open with the nostalgia of someone who has had 2 glasses of something good. Mia, he said, honestly, hand on heart, did you ever, even once, back in those hallways at Jefferson, did you ever imagine you would end up here? Like this. The table quieted slightly. Everyone wanted to hear this answer. Mia set down her fork. She was quiet for a moment, not the quiet of someone searching for the right words, but the quiet of someone who already has them and is deciding how honestly to give them. No, she said. Kevin nodded, satisfied, as if this confirmed something. I never imagined it, Mia continued. I decided it. There's a difference. Imagining is something you do when you're dreaming. Deciding is something you do when you're done waiting for permission. The table absorbed that. Priya pressed her lips together and nodded slowly. Thomas put down his water glass. Kevin stared at her for a moment, then pointed at her and said, "That's going on my classroom wall," and everyone laughed and the tension dissolved into warmth. But Soo-yeon did not laugh. She was watching Mia with an expression that had moved beyond admiration into something more personal, the look of a woman who had arrived at an evening as one version of herself and was beginning to understand she might leave as another. Across the ballroom, Jason sat at the head table with the deputy minister and 3 members of his board and a journalist from the Korea Economic Daily, who kept asking him questions he was answering on autopilot because 70% of his attention was fixed on table 4. He watched Kevin laugh at something Mia said. He watched Priya lean in. He watched Dre rest his arm along the back of Mia's chair with the casual territorial ease of a man who has never once felt the need to prove he belonged wherever he was. Mr. Park, the journalist said, can you speak to Park Global's expansion plans for Southeast Asia? Absolutely, Jason said, and proceeded to answer the question with the smooth fluency of someone who has given the same answer many times, while his eyes drifted back to table 4 one more time. It was somewhere between the main course and dessert that Soo-yeon excused herself from table 4 and walked toward the balcony doors at the far end of the ballroom. She stepped outside into the night air. The rain had softened to a mist now, and the city of Seoul spread out below in its brilliant, indifferent vastness. She stood at the railing and breathed. She heard the balcony door open behind her 2 minutes later. She turned. Mia stood in the doorway, emerald gown catching the ambient light of the city below. She had followed on instinct. She had seen something in Soo-yeon's eyes at the dinner table that she recognized. The particular look of a woman sitting inside a life that no longer fits correctly. I hope I'm not intruding, Mia said. You're not, Soo-yeon said. Please. Mia joined her at the railing. For a moment neither of them spoke. Below them Seoul hummed and glittered, enormous and indifferent and beautiful. He invited you here to show off in front of you, Seon said. It was not a question. Mia was quiet for a beat. Probably, she said. I knew at the moment he mentioned your name 3 months ago, Soo-yeon continued. The way he said it. There was something underneath it. Something he was trying to finish. She paused. I just didn't know who you were. And now that you do? Mia asked. Now that I do, Seon said slowly, I find myself asking questions I did not come here tonight prepared to answer. Mia waited. She had learned a long time ago that the most generous thing you can offer another person is the space to finish their own sentence. How did you do it? Soo-yeon asked. Not the company. Not the money. I mean, how did you become someone who does not need the room to validate her? Because I have spent 4 years in rooms like this one, and I still walk in checking whether people think I deserve to be here. Mia looked out at the city for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was quiet and direct and carried no performance in it whatsoever. I stopped asking for permission, she said. Not from rooms. Not from people. Not even from the version of myself that was still standing in that school hallway wearing the wrong jacket. I just stopped. And the moment I stopped asking, I started building. And the building became the answer to every question anyone had ever made me feel about myself. Soo-yeon was quiet for a long time. He was cruel to you, she said finally. In school. He was young, Mia said. And frightened. And far from home. That doesn't excuse it. But it explains it. And explanation is enough for me to carry without it becoming a weight. Soo-yeon shook her head slowly. You came all this way, she said. Private jet. That gown. All of it. And you're standing here offering grace he hasn't asked for. I'm not offering it to him, Mia said gently. I'm keeping it for myself. Grace is not something you give away. It's something you decide to live inside. Because the alternative is letting someone who hurt you 20 years ago continue to collect rent in your head. And I evicted Jason Park from my head a very long time ago. Soo-yeon stared at her. Then she laughed, a short, genuine, slightly undone laugh that sounded like something releasing. I needed to hear that, she said. Not about Jason. About myself. I know, Mia said simply. The balcony door opened. Dre leaned out, jacket still perfect, expression easy. They're about to do the speeches, he said. You want to come back in, or should I bring you both a dessert out here? Soo-yeon laughed again, softer this time. We're coming, Mia said. She touched Soo-yeon's arm briefly as they turned toward the door, just a light, passing touch, the kind that carries more warmth than most long conversations. Soo-yeon felt it settle somewhere deep and quiet inside her chest, in the place where important things land when they arrive at exactly the right moment. They walked back into the ballroom together. And across the room, Jason Park watched his girlfriend walk in beside the woman he had invited here to feel small, both of them composed, both of them carrying something on their faces that he could not name, but immediately understood he had never given either of them. The string quartet finished its piece. The lights shifted slightly toward the stage. A microphone stood waiting. And Jason Park, CEO, founder, host of the evening, walked toward it carrying a speech he had written 3 weeks ago that he already knew, in his bones, he was not going to be able to deliver. CTA, stay with me. What Jason does at that microphone is something nobody in that ballroom is going to see coming. Subscribe now and tell me, what do you think he says? The ballroom settled into the particular silence that falls over a room when something important is about to happen. Servers retreated to the walls. Guests found their seats. Glasses were refilled and then left untouched. The spotlight found Jason Park at the microphone and painted him in a clean, unforgiving white light that left nowhere to hide and nothing to perform behind. He looked out at the room. 300 faces looked back at him. Board members, investors, journalists, government officials, old classmates. Soo-yeon at table 4, watching him with eyes that had shifted into something new tonight, something he could not quite read from this distance, but could feel the weight of across the entire ballroom. And Mia Johnson at the center of it all, hands folded on the table in front of her, spine straight, face open, waiting with the patience of someone who has learned that every story eventually arrives at its own truth regardless of how long the telling takes. Jason unfolded his speech. 3 pages. Single-spaced. He had written it himself, which he was proud of, and rehearsed it 11 times, which he had told no one. It opened with a quote from a Korean economist he admired. It moved through Park Global's founding story with the precision of a man who understood that the founding story is the most powerful marketing tool a company possesses. It built toward a climax of projected revenue figures and expansion timelines that had made his CFO visibly emotional during the rehearsal. It was a very good speech. He looked down at the first line. Read it silently. Looked up. Looked at Mia. She was not performing attention. She was simply there, present and real in the way that very few people manage to be in formal settings. She was just Mia. The same Mia who had walked past him in a school hallway 22 years ago, without a second glance. The same Mia who had worn a worn jacket and carried second-hand books and whispered something to herself that he had never been close enough to hear. The same Mia who had apparently gone home from that hallway and decided something, not imagined it, decided it, and then spent the next 2 decades quietly, relentlessly, without noise or announcement, building a $4 billion answer to every single doubt the world had ever placed on her shoulders. Jason folded his speech. A small sound moved through the room, not quite a gasp, not quite a murmur. Just an intake of collective breath. Linda, standing near the back wall, pressed her tablet to her chest. I had a speech, Jason said into the microphone. His voice was steady but carried something underneath it that everyone in the room could hear, the specific texture of a man speaking without armor for the first time in a very long while. It was a good speech. It had a quote and everything. Quiet laughter from the room. The tension softened slightly at the edges. 10 years ago, I started this company with a borrowed laptop, $40,000 from my father that he could not afford to lend me, and the absolute unshakable certainty that I was going to prove something to the world. He paused. Tonight I was going to stand here and tell you that I did. That Park Global is the proof. That these 10 years are the answer. He looked down at the folded pages in his hand. Then he set them on the podium and stepped slightly away from it, a small physical movement that somehow changed the entire energy of the room. But I have spent this entire evening sitting inside a lesson I did not pay for and did not sign up for and cannot pretend I did not receive. His jaw tightened briefly. There is someone in this room tonight who I knew a long time ago. Someone I treated with a carelessness that I dressed up as confidence because I was 14 years old in a country that was not mine and I did not know how to be frightened without performing the opposite of it. The room was completely still. 300 people held their breath as one. I invited her here tonight, Jason continued, and now his voice had dropped into something quieter and more exposed, and I want to be honest with myself and with all of you about the fact that my reasons for doing so were not generous ones. I wanted to show her something. I wanted her to walk into this room and understand that the boy she had never noticed had become someone impossible to overlook. He stopped, swallowed, and then she arrived. A short pause. On a private jet. The room broke, genuine laughter, warm and surprised, rolling through the ballroom like a wave. Even Mia smiled. Even Dre's mouth curved upward at the corner.